What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another brand new video, another special video. So today this is going to be part 2 of the 3-part series on how to grow your butt. So if you haven't watched the first one, and by the way, nobody should be moving on to this phase just yet because I literally just put it out last week. So complete all your first 4 weeks and then enter this phase 2. So phase 2 will last 4 weeks, but we are adding 1 additional day of training. So we're going to do 4 days of training, and the rep schemes will increase to 15 to 20 reps with new movements. The main focus lift for this particular phase will be the sumo deadlift. Let's get it. All right, here we go. And I do have a special surprise for you guys, so stay all the way to the end so you find out what it is. But anyways, the warm-up, as always, make sure you warm up. We're progressing the 90-90 by adding a hip thrust. And you'll notice I am no longer using the ground as additional support. So if you can, keep the arms up and away from your body. Next, these are known as CARs, or controlled articular rotations of the hip, just opening up the hip complex with a bit of abduction and adduction. Out to the side, up and down. Mainly lead the motion with the heel. Keep the knee flexed so you really fire away and engage the glute, because that is what we are trying to grow after all. In the very last movement, hip flexor to a bit of a hamstring stretch. Don't stay in there for too long because you don't want to relax the muscles. For everything, remember, it is only 1 set. Do 5 on each side. Do this prior to every single session, meaning for all 4 days, this is exactly how you will begin your training. First movement, first exercise, as I mentioned, the main lift for this particular phase is the sumo deadlift. This will be the only heavy compound movement that we will be doing for the next 4 weeks. This will be a 5x5, working with 85 to 95% of our 1 rep max, with a 2-minute rest period in between each set. Make sure that you abide by these variables so that you guys really allow for the proper adaptation to take place in your body, or you're just not going to get the result that we want. Next, we have a single leg box squat. We're using a box or a bench as our guide to really stay consistent with this. Start at body weight and then begin to add additional load, maybe a light dumbbell, kettlebell, whatever it is. This will be a 2x15 on each side. Try and perform all 15 on one side before alternating to the next. 90 seconds of rest in between. Side lunges, 2x20 on each side, working with 55 to 65% of your 1 rep max for the weight. 90-second rest period in between as well. Just because this is higher volume, you guys will be resting for a lot longer than you did phase 1. So make sure you abide by the rest periods. The last exercise of day 1 is a side plank with abduction. Try not to allow the leg to come all the way down so that you keep tension on the muscle at all times. 2 sets of 15 per side. Day number 2, starting off with a single leg press. 3 sets, 15 each side, working with 65 to 75% of your 1 rep max, with a 90-second rest period in between each set. Again, make sure, I can't stress this enough, that you actually abide by your rest periods so that you're not doing cardio or conditioning. We are strength training, trying to grow the booty. Remember that. That is the main objective. That is the main goal. Next, we have the dumbbell Romanian deadlift. 3x15 at 65 to 75% of your 1 rep max. Again, with a 90-second rest period in between. Keep the weights on the outside of the legs and squeeze the glutes as you push up through the heels. All you're doing is thrusting forward and keeping a little rounded at the top. Next, we have dumbbell curtsy lunges. 2 sets of 20 on each side, working with 55 to 65% of your 1 rep max, with a 90-second rest period in between as well. Notice my heel. My heel is always directly underneath my knee. That is a good tip for you guys to really find stability, but obviously to engage and fire more of your glute as you push back up. Also, imagine separating the floor open. That's always a good cue to really recruit a lot more muscle in the lower body. And the final exercise of day number 2, we have a single leg hip thrust, 3 sets of 15 on each side, working with 75 to 85% of your 1 rep max, with a 90-second rest period in between. So these will be a little heavier than other movements just because you can take a lot more in the aspect of growing the butt here. Thrust and push through the heel, as always. And make sure you keep your back neutral. Day number 3, starting with the sumo deadlift, but this will be 3 sets of 20 reps. So bring the weight down, working with about 55 to 65% of your 1 rep max with a 90-second rest period in between. You really want to focus on glute engagement here. The glutes, glutes, glutes. So all you're doing is think barbell to the hips and hips thrust forward, pushing mainly and vastly through the heel. And again, imagine separating the floor open as you move up and down through space so that you can activate a lot more of that lower posterior. After that, we're going into the leg press. High and wide base, 3 sets of 20 reps, working with 65 to 75% of your 1 rep max with a 90-second rest period in between. Push the knees out away from the midline here. Do not allow the knees to collapse inward, and do not lock the knees at the top of the position. You will cut circulation to the brain, and your ass will pass out. And I cannot guarantee that anybody in there will want to save you. All right, so remember that. No locking the knees ever, 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 unless if you're stretching. And next, standing. Well, actually, I couldn't do them standing, so I had to do the prone. But this is a single leg hamstring curl, 3 sets of 15 on each side with 55 to 65% of your 1 rep max. Also taking a 90-second rest period in between. If you have a machine where you can actually stand, I would highly suggest you doing the standing version, just because you can avoid any type of compensation with maybe the hips leaving the machine. These reverse hyperextensions, use the machine. My machine at this gym was just occupied, so I had to get creative. But you get the picture. 3x20 at body weight. These are reverse hyperextensions or froggers. And obviously I need a lot more stability, hence why I just decided to grab the door. But all I'm doing is really thrusting, keeping the knees flexed to engage and fire my glutes. And I'm just imagining kicking somebody up behind me and in the sky with my heels. That'll really fire my glutes. All right, day number 4. Oh, and a 90-second rest period in between those. Sorry about that. Last one, single leg isometric step downs. This is a superset. So you're going to be performing this movement and the next one back to back. 20 on each side, 65 to 70% of your 1 rep max. 2 sets. Nice and controlled. And this is a good little hint at the surprise I have for you guys. I haven't mentioned anything about going up with the weights, and that's simply because we're going to be focusing on tempo these next 4 weeks. And I'll explain that in just a little bit, but you can kind of get a hint here. We're going to superset this with a box jump to pistol. So basically I'm jumping and landing on a pistol. Obviously, if you're not at this level, adjust the movement, please, so that it suits you. But if you are doing these, go 3 each side and then take a 90-second rest in between the superset. You're only doing this twice, and these will be body weight. Do not add weight. This is more about control and being as explosive as you can. Next superset. This is also a superset. So you're going to perform this movement and the next one back to back with no rest period in between until you are done. 2 rounds. This is a Cossack. So now I'm remaining in the wide base position as I move from side to side. These will be 4 to 5 on each side. 65, working with about 65 to 75% of your 1 rep max. So that should equate to about 8 to 10 reps. And that's just, again, because you've already done this once throughout the week. But this one, you are actually adding a little bit more weight. So once you complete this, we're going to go on to a kneeling, meaning starting on the floor, going into a plyometric, jumping up, and then completing a box jump. If you can do this, you will be performing 10 repetitions at body weight. Do not add load to this. This is about power, speed, explosiveness. And then take a 90-second rest, and then repeat that 1 more time. You're only doing 2 of these. So those are the only 2 supersets of this specific phase for these 4 weeks. This is day number 4. We have one final movement. This is a single leg wall sit, an isometric hold. You will be doing this till failure. If you need to practice, alternate. Go 1 leg at a time until you're comfortable enough to really just hold each leg until you can't no more. Try to work up to 30, 45, even 60 seconds. Whatever you can do, just make sure you keep your body plastered to the wall. And let's talk about what we're going to be doing with our tempo. Week number 1, everything will be performed at a 1-1-1. Week number 2, everything will be performed at a 2-2-2. Week 3, 3-3-3, and week 4, 4-4-4. Tempo is the pace at which you conduct every single exercise. With the exception of the power movements and the day 1, the sumo deadlift 5x5, everything will abide by that tempo. If you guys need further explanation on that, let me know, or just look it up. There are basically every single exercise in the world has this. It's an eccentric, an isometric, and a concentric. Make sure you apply those variables. This is the cool down, just stretching now. I'm just going a little faster here with the stretches so that I'm not wasting you guys' time and you don't have to actually watch me stretch. But ideally, you want to hold these positions for 30 to 60 seconds each. All I'm doing here is a pigeon, progressing again from my phase 1. Next, I have a quad rock. So I start in a quadruped position, kick one leg out to the side, and then I just rock back, pushing back on the hips, stretching the inside of my thigh, which is my adductor. There's a different view here so you guys can kind of get a better view, understand what's happening. And again, you're holding these for 30 to 60 seconds. The last one is basically a half 90 with leg extension. And I'm falling all the way down to the floor so that both my shoulder blades actually touch the ground. Again, 30 to 60 seconds would be the goal. Make sure you guys cool down after every single session just like this. Next week, I'll be putting out the final phase, phase 3. Be excited, get hyped. Make sure you guys are applying these variables. And again, nobody should be on this phase just yet, just because only 1 week has elapsed since the last video, okay? Y'all train hard, eat right, like the video, leave any questions down below, and I'll get back to y'all as soon as I can. I'll see y'all in the next one.